Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. You know we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful August 16th, 2018. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, are you ready for some football?
I think I have to be.
We got a little bit going on tonight. I don't know whether it's in Canada and Washington. What's the difference between the countries and stuff? But, we got a little preseason kickoff going on in a few hours.
Yeah, it's always good. It's just like football kickoff is like you smell the barbecue in the backyard. You can't eat it yet, but you can sure smell it. And speaking of smelling it, a lot of good things happening in the sports universe with NFL football, college football, high school football is kicking off all over the place. In California this upcoming Friday, we have De La Salle versus Folsom, ranked #1 and 2 in Northern California. Also on the college scene, there's a lot of programs, Big C, that make over $100 million with their college football and their basketball and women, etc. So a lot of good things happening in the sports universe. But I do want to mention today, just we talk about paying homage to a lot of people. First, I want to say this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Today, we talked about it earlier in the week. The Queen of Soul has sang so many beautiful songs, and so many of those songs are indelibly impressed in our minds, in our hearts and souls. And every time you think about a favorite song, there's so many times that she has made that list no matter where you are in the universe. Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, sang a good song, Big C, sang so many good songs. Even though, she's passed on, she will be missed, but her music will live forever, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the legendary Queen of Soul, Charlton, lost her battle with time today, unfortunately. But she's been endeavorably enriched in so many minds, Charlton, over the decades. You think about over 60 years of performing for America, an iconic treasure that this country possessed. She has so many honorary doctors, Charlton, from Yale to Harvard to Michigan, just all over this country, Charlton. The Kennedy's Hall of Fame, first female singer to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Wow.
To have performed at the inauguration of 3 presidents, Charlton. You think about how much she was beloved in the mainstream and in politics. You think about every major sporting event in America, Charlton. She performed.
Yeah.
Whether it's the World Series, the Super Bowl, championship fights, Charlton, hockey, NHL championship. Detroit Red Wings were an indelible team during her run, Charlton, as the Queen. But Aretha Franklin touched so many with the ballads that she sang. Because when they talk about the Me Too movement, Charlton, Aretha Franklin started that for women.
Yeah.
When you think about when she said respect, okay, the Me Too movement is all about respect. Aretha Franklin created that with her song Respect, Charlton.
Yeah.
And you try to go up and down a list, and all you need is the first 2 chords of any Aretha Franklin song. And as an audience, you can continue to sing the song without her being there.
Yeah.
And she often did that at a concert. She would start, hold the mic out, to take it over, because I made this a part of you. And everybody's trying to find her favorite song.
Yeah.
That touches their lives. And you can go up the list. So you talk about 18 Grammys.
Wow.
How can you pick a favorite out of 18 Grammys, Charlton?
Hard to do.
Over 100 gold records, Charlton.
Yeah.
This is what she's had, top charting hits. This woman has spanned the decades, 60s, 70s, 80s. And when she performed at the Kennedy Center in 2015,
yeah,
honoring Carole King, And Carole King wrote the song, You Made Me Feel Like a Natural Woman.
Oh, yeah.
Aretha Franklin made it her own and the world's. Carole King beloved Aretha Franklin for doing that. She brought a tear to President Obama's eyes when she was performing this song. She resonated throughout the Kennedy Center, Charlton, that everyone there respected her for what she was as a person. And when you think about what she meant to American black society, Charlton,
yeah,
this is a woman that grew up during the movement, okay?
Yep.
She grew up during the civil rights movement. She's the only entertainer to perform at the late Dr. Martin Luther King's funeral.
Wow.
That's how much in reverence she was held, Charlton, that they felt that no one else in the industry could represent him in the way that she could.
Wow.
And Charlton,
yeah,
you know, she performed everywhere, and she performed with grace everywhere, even in the latter years of her life when she was fighting illness.
Yeah.
She went out with character, dignity, and promise for everybody.
Yeah.
Because she showed you don't give up. You don't ever give up. I think about this speech by the late Jimmy Valvano.
Yeah.
One thing I ask you to do is laugh, to cry, to smile.
Yep.
Aretha did that for everybody. And even today in her passing, Charlton, she still did that for everybody. Because when you thought about Aretha, you smile.
Yeah.
When you heard a song about Aretha, you smile. You laugh with friends thinking about what you were doing during a certain time of a song when you first heard it. Aretha caused you to laugh.
Yeah.
But even more so, she caused everybody to cry today because she meant so much to them.
Yeah, I think that's a very well said, Big C. And I think sometimes the advantage, and I know some people may not look at it this way, but the advantage to being an African American in this great country of ours, a land of the free and the home of the brave, is you get to meander in and out of the two main societies, one black, one white. As African Americans, we've seen some of our greatest musicians that could not perform in a mainstream club. We've seen some of our greatest comedians that could not perform in a mainstream club. When you speak about the beautiful, graceful Aretha Franklin doing her thing in Jim Crow, could not rent certain hotels, could not go to certain restaurants, had to go to the colored drinking fountains too. All those things did not stop her from being great. In fact, one of the best voices in the history of the universe, Aretha Franklin. And as an African American boy, I remember growing up always watching American Bandstand. But before that, I watched a lot of Soul Train with Don Cornelius and seeing Aretha Franklin performing on TV. And for not just black women, but black boys too. You saw someone who was so good that you may have a law that's against her, but the universe was on her side because her vocal cords, they commanded everyone from mainstream, no matter what color you are, to remember those beautiful songs. And I'm so grateful to know that she did that as an elegant African-American woman in Jim Crow. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you think about any black person in America that was born in the 40s, and you were told by your parents, your father, that you would one day perform in front of kings, queens, presidents, popes. She did it all. She even performed in front of Pope Francis, the latest Pope, Charlton.
Yeah.
Aretha Franklin spanned 60 years of giving, not entertaining, Charlton, of giving people hope, prosperity, through the words of her music. And you know, people always talk about, because she grew up in the church, and when you go out into the mainstream, they want to call that secular music, Charlton. Aretha Franklin sang music.
Yes.
She made music. It wasn't secular. It wasn't religious. It was music. It was felt by the heart. And the heart doesn't based on religion, Charlton. The heart is what you have. And she had that. She was a very giving private person. She was a mother of 4. She protected her family to the utmost. She never let her family be brought out into her personal life, Charlton. She kept that completely separate. And you don't see that today in artists. You know, you didn't see the battle that you have today with all these artists going after each other, even though social media didn't exist 50 years ago, Charlton.
Yeah.
But there was a mutual respect for artists because they all had to suffer and fight through the same bigotry and racism and separation of society through those days. Aretha Franklin and Harry Belafonte would go out and do charitable concerts to pay Dr. King's bills during his time of the Civil Rights Movement, Charlton, so that he could make payroll for his staff, so they could afford to eat. She did charitable work for the Civil Rights Movement, Charlton, not worrying about what she needed, but she knew what the march needed, Charlton, what the movement needed. That's how socially conscious Aretha Franklin was. People don't speak about that because you don't want to let people know how clairvoyant that somebody is. And I thank President Bush, 43, for giving her the Medal of Freedom, Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest honor that an American citizen can have. President Bush recognized the greatness and the charitable contribution to American society that Aretha Franklin made. The one thing that I'm most appalled about today, Charlton, is a statement that was made a couple days ago. When the current president called a black woman a dog. It shows the lack of character and intuition that he has as a person. Because here's one of the greatest black iconic figures in the history of America, Charlton, as far as contributions to our society. Doesn't have the class or the character or even the low lives that worked for him, Charlton, to send out a statement of gratitude, respect, and sorrow to her family, Charlton. This is what we have as an administration. Everyone else could reach out, Charlton, those former presidents and cabinet members, Charlton, over the decades, that she affected their lives, Charlton, that she respected their lives. But I'm going to say this is personal. This is not Charlton and Big C Sports. This is personal. Is that this is low life, that you have a person that is in charge of everything that just a couple of days ago referred to black women as dogs, don't even know how to use the term respect. One of her greatest songs, Charlton.
You know, I think about the thing that when Aretha sang, because a lot of her music was developed during Jim Crow, times of pain, where they after being ostracized from mainstream, and she still became great. I think about some of the songs, you know, I Knew You Were Waiting, Chain of Fools, Freeway of Love, we all heard about that. You better think about what you're trying to do to me, and, you know, Since You've Been Gone, Rock Steady. But one of my favorite songs that I pined over many times when a woman left me back in the day, Big C, is Until You Come Back to Me. Until you come back to me, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna knock on your door, tap on your window frame. That's not just about love. That could also be equated with opportunity. Because during those times of civil rights, they didn't have those opportunities. So when she's singing Until You Come Back to Me, that's what I'm going to do. A lot of people think, oh, that's just about love when somebody left somebody and you're pining for that person to come back. Well, they've already left before they left. They left emotionally before they left physically. But also, I'm going to, Until You Come Back to Me, which is almost, you can equate that with civil rights. Until those opportunities from the Constitution ring true. Those days that Martin Luther King was singing, I Have a Dream. And Aretha Franklin and a lot of great African-American artists, they sing about love. They sing about hope, joy, and pain. You know, all of those beautiful things. I'll Be There. We think the Jacksons, all of that. Everybody had reverence for Aretha Franklin. And I would contend that more mainstream Americans bought her music than African Americans, because there's only 13 million of us in the country. But she's one of the top selling artists in the history of the world. And when you think about what she had to go through to get there, I'm just proud that she sang with that voice that made so many African American women get up in the morning, go work as nannies. You can see certain movies that talked about that. They worked as nannies in mainstream homes, cleaning their kids behind, feeding those kids, that at some point in time were like Trump, that grew up in favoritism, nepotism, cronyism, grew up without being told you can't drink out of a certain water fountain, you can't eat in a certain restaurant, you can't stay in what hotel. Black women did that with great dignity, even though it was humiliating. Many of them were sexually harassed. They were called dogs. We've just heard that recently. We think that history doesn't repeat itself. It does. That's why when I see so many athletes, and not just athletes, but great athletes that are not sycophants, and they came out and said what she meant to them. Before I throw it back to you, Big C, there's so many times when the voice of a black woman uplifted not only black women well before the Me Too movement, but it uplifted black men and black boys. Talking about respect, even though mainstream did not respect us as beautiful black people, the universe did. And you can Google Dr. Leakey and Gregor Mendel when I'm talking about that. Big C, that respect is something that will always last because we use it as a mantra. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, she was a spokesperson that didn't realize she was a spokesperson. She was enjoying what she was doing. She was trying to share a gift. She grew up in a very religious household, Charlton. Her late father, the Reverend C.L. Franklin out of Detroit, Charlton, was her mentor. And, things weren't always good for families in the 40s and 50s, especially African-American, Charlton.
Yep.
And she grew up in that. You think about her, that her second album, by the time she was 14 years of age, Charlton, she was also a mother of two. But, she persevered through hardship, disappointment, despair. But that's not what you heard in her music, Charlton. Her music was about striving to be better.
Yep.
To get better as a culture, to get better as a person, to give inspiration. These are the things that we look for. We look now for black athletes to provide people with inspiration and hope. During Aretha's time, when I was growing up, we looked at the black entertainers.
Yeah.
We listened for their next message in the song. I think about the OJs who mimicked a lot of what she said, and they had a song, There's a Message in Our Music.
Yeah.
We got it. And you have to pay attention to what artists are saying. And I think so much of that is lost now with our young artists.
Yeah.
Because they bought into this negative message in their music. And it's not uplifting and inspiring. When you think about Aretha, a lot of people would think Aretha was part of Motown, which she never recorded for Motown. She never did. But she was so much an iconic part of that time, Charlton.
Yeah.
Motown being the leader in black music. But Aretha was out there on her own, doing her own thing.
Yeah.
And you think about a song, she did a remake of a Donny Hathaway song, Charlton, To Be Young, Gifted, and Black.
Yep.
And if you ever listen to that song, you people who Google that, just Google it. It doesn't make any difference who sings the song. Just Google, To Be Young, Gifted, and Black.
Yep.
And it's what Aretha did in her songs. We must begin to tell our young that they're young, gifted, and black.
Yeah.
There are millions of young boys and girls that you must love and embrace. This is what we don't do any longer, Charlton. And Aretha, when I speak about her being involved in athletics, she was a Detroit girl. She moved at the age of 4. The Detroit Red Wings, Charlton, were always dear to her heart.
Yep.
The Detroit Tigers, Charlton, she resonated in that community. The Detroit Pistons, the Detroit Tigers, Charlton, Thomas the Hitman Hearns,
yep,
very close with him, Charlton. When you think about, she performed at all those championships, Charlton. The World Series for the Detroit Tigers, the World Championships that the Detroit Pistons were chasing.
Is it Joe Louis, I believe?
Championship fights that Thomas Hearns was involved in.
Yeah.
The Detroit Red Wings Stanley Cup runs. She performed at the Super Bowl, Charlton, in New Orleans with Dr. Johns and Aaron Neville. Aretha Franklin, and that's the Super Bowl that had the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Seattle Seahawks in it.
Yeah, yeah.
But Aretha Franklin just crossed the gamut, Charlton, as far as her involvement as a social activist. She wasn't quiet about it, Charlton. She went out and lent her voice every day to social activism.
Yeah.
It was a matter of whether you were paying attention or not.
You know what, Big C? You told me some things I did not know, and I'm kind of I'm torn when I say this because oftentimes we're so used to being lied to. I mean, everybody wants someone to tell them the truth. There are a lot of people who are sycophants. They won't tell you the truth. They want to tell you what you want to hear. And what I'm going to say, I'm guilty of it too. But when I grew up as a young African-American boy, I was always told you're beautiful, you're intelligent, you're smart. And you went outside and mainstream call you the N-word that so many people love using, even though they say they don't, because they're ashamed of it, but they don't have the balls to say it in public anymore. They still say it in closed doors. It was some of her songs that uplifted me. Now, I'm going to say the genre of African-American, the diaspora of Black American, and I know a lot of people couldn't care less what I'm going to say now because I've been called whatever people want to call what I'm going to say. When you listen to her songs, respect yourself. Until you come back to me, that's what I'm going to do. Think. All those things about love. Her music now would not be made because she's not talking about black hatred, black self-denigration. I'm going to blankety blank and beat that body down and spank you around and knock you around and rip it and zip it and flip it. Now, there are millionaires made today that could not have made music back in the day when Aretha was doing her thing. And I learned a long time ago that sometimes people in our own genre will say, well, that's the only way I can get rich is to sing about self-hatred. Shoot them up, beat them up, flip them up, beat them up, knock them up. You know, have all this garbage that we hear from a lot of our mainstream. I mean, there's a lot of young African-American men that should listen to her music. And I know maybe mainstream will say you can't make money if you sing about love and building people up like Aretha did and Marvin Gaye. You got to sing about shooting somebody, beating somebody down, slapping those blankety blank around, and it's always looking at the woman that gave birth to them. That's who they're singing about. And people, I mean, I know maybe I'm old school, but we can always atone because I listen to that music too, Big C. I'm not saying I'm different from anybody else, but just listening to Aretha, there's only 86,400 seconds in a day. What are we all doing with that time? When I listen to her songs, I feel uplifted. When I listen to some of the prominent African-American musicians now, I feel like, man, I don't want my mother hearing that because they're telling my mother she's a blankety blanket, she's a blippity blipper, she's a blabbity blap, and people have made them millionaires. And I think that's destroying our psyche as a people, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, can you pull up a song that was made 55 years ago by 10 different female singers and know after the first two chords of the song, Charlton, you know the entire song?
Yep.
Aretha Franklin you can do that with. Not many, Charlton. And of today's artists, you won't be able to do that 55 years from now, Charlton. But when you have something that means something, Aretha's songs were like a family member.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, Charlton, in Jim Crow in the early 60s, Charlton, mid-60s. There were 3 photos in every black household, okay?
Yeah.
There was a photograph of Jesus Christ, or you can call them portraits or whatever.
Yeah.
There was a portrait of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yep.
There was a portrait of JFK.
Yeah.
But every household, Charlton, had Aretha Franklin music playing in it.
Yeah.
Think about that. She ran with those 3 people in time. Jesus Christ, Dr. Martin Luther King, JFK.
Yeah.
Her picture wasn't up, but her music was on the transistor radio or on the 45 turntable, Charlton, that you had in your house.
Yep.
Aretha Franklin was as much of Americana, black Americana, as those 3 iconic individuals in history.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. And so I know everybody loves some favorite song, but that's 86,400 seconds that every person in the world has in a day. What are we doing with that time? Life's good and bad for everybody. We got to focus on what we love. But there's something I can say about Aretha Franklin's music. I can play it even though my grandparents are gone. I remember hearing them and listening to her music. And they didn't have to turn it off when the kids came into the room. I remember my mother and father listening to her songs. They didn't have to turn it off. Al Green, Smokey Robinson, Aretha Franklin, Roberta Flack, they sang about life and things that made us feel good about ourselves. And so I just want to say to all the people that say, yeah, but that's back then and this is new now, I got to call you the blankety blank and the blippity blap and the flappity lip and the B word and the H word and the four-letter word, because I'll get rich. The record companies will make them rich when they do that. And I'm seeing some of our top musicians today, they couldn't even sing her note like she could, but they made more money by denigrating her look. So you'll hear a lot of people saying, you know, we want to, our hearts and prayers go out to the Queen of Soul, and she made some much to our genre and to people all over the world. And right when they go back to the record studio, is you blankety blip and you blankety this and you mother blanking that, and I just think we should take a pause and realize that the reason she had a lot of respect for herself and so many people love her is because they can have their kids and their grandparents listen to her music. And Big C, I love your knowledge of what she's done, that she never really performed for Motown, but everybody in Motown still consider her one of their own because she's sang from the heart. And for everybody going through something, I'm sure you'll be playing her music today, and you'll be playing her tomorrow, and not only will you play it, your kids will play it. Last thing I want to bring up on that, Big C, because Aretha Franklin, sometimes when a river is flowing, it starts to widen the land that it flows through, like the Grand Canyon. I want people to pay attention that African American women in the September, I think the most in the history of magazines, have black women appeared on the cover. Now these same black women that are going to appear on the cover, some of them Beyonce, Rihanna, Tiffany Haddish, Tracy Ellis Ross, Slick Woods, Issa Rae, there's Naomi Campbell, and many more. But on Vogue, Glamour, Elle magazine, they used to only be on Jet. They can listen to music and play that music that Aretha Franklin sang that they couldn't play with some of our top African American artists today, because for some reason someone convinced us to sell out ourselves in the people whose womb we come out of, to denigrate that. So when POTUS does it, he's like, well, why everybody mad at me? I just bought some rap music. They say the same thing, but they do it 50 times in a song. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you can't use your narrow-mindedness to blame somebody else. And when we talk about mainstream, saying that you'll get rich off of it, you buy into mainstream. This is what you do to accept to be a part of mainstream society. This is the reason why African-American athletes who choose to try to change society's looks at minorities come under so much backfire, Charles.
Yeah.
Because they're not talking negatively about minorities, about black people in America, Charlton. It's not the songs that white society hears on the radio. They say, well, those athletes are not talking about it like that. Why? Well, we must find ways to attack them, to say that they're un-American. Think about that. If you're not attacking other black people, then you're un-American.
That's
where we've come to in society. So when people want to say it's the flag, no. They're not attacking other black people. They're trying to protect them. But when you look at and listen at radio now, Charlton, and the videos of how denigrating they are towards black people, they say, well, black people are in them. Well, there's white companies that own the airways, Charlton,
yep,
that produce this as they want to call entertainment.
Yeah.
You know, they're the ones who are saying what will and will not play on the airways, Charlton. Well, if people think that black people are controlling, Google, how many major black stations are owned by black Americans, Charlton? Pretty simple. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. They're not owned by black Americans. So when you want to sit there and say, well, blacks are doing it, no, they're not. This is what people are taking and putting on the airways and saying that this is the only way that blacks can get on the airways.
Yeah.
When you listen to an old school station, Charlton, which they call them old school, I call it my music. You know, when I'm listening.
Oldies but goodies.
And my kids don't want to ride the car with me. Why you always listening to this? Because I understand the words of what they're saying.
Yeah.
And they're talking about me.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the reason why I listen to it. The first thing they want to do is change the station when they get in the car. I say, you got a phone. Plug in your earplugs.
Yep.
Listen to your music. Don't bother me.
Yeah.
You know, this makes me comfortable when I'm driving. I'm not on edge. I'm not looking around to see who's pointing at me.
Yeah.
You know, so this is what we've lost as a society.
Yeah.
To stay to achieve is that we have to sell out.
Yep.
And if we don't sell out as black athletes, then we become anti-American. Think about that statement. Because these black athletes who are calling for social change are not considered sellouts. they're anti-American.
Yep, horrible.
That's where American has gone with this. Don't say that it's about something else. No, it's about making America America. So when you see an athlete calling for a social cause, a social change, that's American. You know, when you have the president saying that the media is anti-American and against the American public, he doesn't say that the media is against black athletes. Think about that. He doesn't say that. But he says that these black athletes are against Americans because they want equality.
Wow, that's something else. And I gotta, you just alerted my mind to something. And sometimes people say, well, where are you now compared to where you're going to be? I'm going to defend Big C Sports for a moment because we are black owned. And no matter, we may not have the money that Sony has. We may not have the money that some of these billion-dollar corporations have. But the content is produced by two black men, two beautiful, intelligent African-American men. And all I believe is saying things that you can Google. So even in 100 years from now, when people Google Big C Sports, they can only say, you know what, they told us to Google, so you'll know if we're telling the truth or not about things. We're not like mainstream that says, oh, don't Google, just take my word for it. We control our own content. There's no producer in my ear. There's none in yours. Now, we don't own the outreaches that we're on, but people have invited us onto their platforms. But we do control the content. I don't know what you're going to say. You freestyle. You don't know what I'm going to say. I just freestyle. We speak from the heart. But what I will never ever do, and I can say never. I can't say, well, I can't confirm or deny, like some people in the White House can't confirm or deny if POTUS ever used the N-word. I can tell you this: I will never denigrate African American people on this program unless they earn it. And all I say is Google it. If somebody's doing something that's disruptive, I'm going to say Google it. Don't take my word for it. And that's us. But I will never be a sycophant to what mainstream says. I'm never going to try to dumb down what I say so that people can say, well, you know what, we're going to bring you on our platform as long as you destroy your own people's psyche. I'm never going to do that. As long as you speak bad about the mothers that produce black babies, then we'll give you a bigger platform. I'm never going to do that. We're already on the #1 platform in the universe. But I'm not going to use that platform to tear down African Americans. And I know some people say that we should because there'd be maybe more opportunity, but I'm not interested. So when I have an African American rapper that takes a $100 million contract because he's going to call his mother a blankety blank and a blippity blip and a dappity dap, and you know what I mean, I'm never going to do that. We don't use profanity on Big C Sports. We could, but we don't. So I'm not saying that people should be like us, but I'm sure every person in the universe that's person of color or mainstream can say, you know what, those guys speak the truth. Whether they like it or not, they can Google it, but they don't hear us being a sycophant to tear down our own race. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, and that bothers a lot of people, is that you need people to buy in to pass along your message. You have to be quiet or you have to go along. That's how mainstream looks at it. We watch broadcasts every day, Charlton. We listen to broadcasts every day. Every American does. And when you sit around and you listen to people who lack content in what they say, because they say, well, hey, I just want to keep a job, and you know, my job is not to criticize the truth. My job is just to read the script. I was watching this very prominent angry broadcaster today, Charlton, whose teleprompter went down. He couldn't find his notes.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, big time angry.
Yeah.
Big time angry.
Yeah.
So what did he resort to do? He resorted to bashing one black athlete over another.
Yeah.
That's all he could do. Because he didn't have anything else, because people had wrote stuff for him to say. So since I can't find what they told me to say, let me blast one black athlete over another.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how appalling are you? Wow. I know that you have greatness in you because you're a very intelligent man. But this is what you stoop to when you can't find the notes and your computer's gone down. Let's get negative on one black athlete over another.
Because it's
not sit there and relish over what both of them have accomplished and still accomplishing. But let me pit them against each other.
Yeah.
There's nothing else in society that I can do, but let me have them go after each other. Let me have black society pick sides.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing. And he wasn't intelligent enough, as intelligent as he is. Trust me, he's highly intelligent.
Yeah.
But he wasn't intelligent enough to recognize what he's doing, to tell black America, you have to choose sides. You can't be together.
Yeah.
You have to choose sides. You either got to be with the man or not with the man.
You know, that's
period.
Yeah.
That's, you know, and I was so hurt when I was sitting there, and it's like the gamut of sport that you're covering is so vast. But this is all that you can do. And the thing about it, that season is not even going on.
No.
But you made it a point to say, look, I'm going to tear down one black guy to get to another black guy, and I want the majority of my listeners who are white to agree with me, and those of you that are black to agree also.
Well, I think it works because they get the seven figures when they do it that way. And I just say Google it, no matter what color you are. I speak that. If I don't know something, I'll say I don't know it. But I do know that all life began on the African continent. I know that according to Dr. Leakey and Gregory Mendel because I believe in science. And I say Google it. Don't take my word for it. I want every person in the universe. Google where all life began. So that way, when we think about Aretha Franklin and her passing and how beautiful she was, speak the truth. And make it so true that people can Google it and you're not hoping they don't find out the truth. So if I know that's the case, every young person, no matter what color you are, if we all knew where we came from, maybe we would respect your root a little better. Remember Aretha Franklin said, she sang that song, Respect? If you know where you come from, you respect each other. So hopefully someday we can get some of the African-American men and women who are told, we'll make you rich if you denigrate your own people in your music. If you denigrate your own people in your music and talk about shooting them up and blanking them up and then blipping them up and in the mother blank this and the mother blank that, if you do that, what makes you rich? Maybe if they get conscious of who they are, they'll stop doing that. I do want to say that sports is a $1 billion industry, and girls and boys sports is the foundation to this $1 billion industry. And for every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports. Whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, or high school team, or your mom and pop soccer league, when you reach out to them, let them know Big C sent you. I want to say one more thing before I ask you a few things about the NFL, Big C. Vogue magazine. Tyler Mitchell, the first African-American photographer to shoot an American Vogue's cover in the publication's nearly 126-year history. The first. Now we talk about what is equality. What does it mean when we say we want equality in the workforce? He's the first in 126 years to shoot the cover of Vogue magazine, which is a mainstream newspaper or mainstream magazine. First in 126 years. Have we come a long way? In 125 years, no African American had done it. We're just talking today, Big C. Slavery was abolished 1865. So when people say respect, if we know who we come from, where we come from, we're asking mainstream, open those doors of opportunities. We're asking those banks, when an African-American family comes in and wants to get a business loan, say yes. Don't make them mark white on the application to get it. Say yes. Give those opportunities to people of color also. It's called respect. They qualify for it. White Americans get the loans. Let the black Americans get them too. It doesn't have to take 126 years. That's egregious, Big C. You can't tell me he's the only one to ever apply. Your thoughts on that before we get on the NFL?
Jonathan, that is not advancement. That is called holding back, is what that is. That is devoiding people of opportunity. When you look at all the publications that have been throughout America, Charlton, in the past 100 years, look how many of those have been graced by black people, Charlton.
A lot.
But majority of them, Charlton, have been graced by black people. But you're saying that blacks don't have the ability to photograph other blacks in the proper light, Charlton. They understand what they look like and they know what their representation should look like, Charlton.
Yeah.
And to keep these opportunities hidden from them, Charlton, over the decades, this is what has happened. I mean, we think about great publications that have gone away, that blacks were a part of, Charlton. And white society has always controlled the publication stream. I don't think that when someone is purchasing a magazine, Charlton, that there's so much concern about who took the photographs.
No, not at all.
To at least give somebody an opportunity to put their photographs in there. And their photographs may have been of better quality.
Yeah.
But what happens, Charlton, when you have a minority with a better quality product is that you have to take a step back at white society and say, hey, have we lost hold of what we used to own?
Yeah.
Well, it's not that you ever lost hold of it, Charlton. Is that you've always cost other people the opportunity to be a part of what you do.
Yeah. You know what's interesting when you say that? there's that narrow approach. The new issue of British Vogue boasts the magazine's first black editor-in-chief, Edward Inful, who immigrated to London from Ghana. Its first black September cover girl, Rihanna, the beautiful Rihanna, who was born in Barbados. Elle, Canada's issue. Ross covers the first production of that magazine by the only black editor-in-chief in Elle's network. Why is that the case? You think about it, under her leadership, 6 of the last 11 issues have featured women of color on the cover. We talk about Aretha Franklin singing about respect. We're just asking mainstream America, give people an opportunity. Don't be so whitewashing when it comes to color. Everybody suntans. They all get a suntan. Where do they get that image from? All people are the same. We just have different skin melanin. But for 126 years, they had the first black photographer. And then you have, it's like a struggle to get African-American women on the magazine. And they seem to be the cream of the crop. There's a plethora of Caucasian women who get work, who get paid just by being white. Is that anti-American? If black magazines did that, is that anti-American? I'm just saying opportunity creates for everybody when we have respect for everybody. Aretha Franklin sang about that. Big C in the NFL, over the last 10 seasons, each team, the NFC, has been represented in the Super Bowl by 9 different teams. In 10 years, 9 different teams. What does that say about parity in the NFC, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it lets you know when people are sitting here saying that the Eagles are the favorite to get back to the Super Bowl. They might want to go back and recheck. The last time that an NFC team got back to the Super Bowl, it was the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
So over the past 10 years, Charlton, there's been 9 different teams that have appeared. So there's a lack of dominance in the NFC.
Yeah.
You can't say that about the AFC because there's a team up there in New England that constantly keeps making reservations in those city hotels to be there.
Yeah.
But the NFC, you know, it's always been the Wild Wild West. It's a free-for-all.
Yeah.
That, you know, you can't say that because you were there, you know, and the reason for that, Charlton, is that this thing they call Super Bowl hangover.
Yeah.
Is that you spend so much time enjoying and reveling in what you've accomplished that you have a tendency to forget what you need to get back to. And I've been in that boat, Charlton, where you thought you'd be right back the next year.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you were.
Yeah.
You were back at home watching the game.
That's funny. Well, speaking of that, go ahead, Big C, go ahead.
So, you know, this is the thing when people are sitting there with this wide open sports betting now.
Yeah.
And you got to look at the Eagles. They're not a secure team like they were last year. They're coming into the season with a lot of injuries. Carson Wentz is not going to be there at the start of the season. He may miss at least the first 6 games.
Yeah.
Alshon Jeffries is out at wide receiver. Ajayi is still having problems with his knee, Charlton. The receiving core is not what it was when the season started.
Yeah.
So the defense, you don't know if Peters will be back at offensive tackle, but the defense, you don't know if they will be totally intact, especially after some free agent moves, Charlton.
Yeah.
They lost a starting linebacker. So this is a team that has to get on track.
Yep. They're going to have to do that, Big C. But when you think about the New England Patriots and Alabama, they've been the most consistent programs, professional and college. What do they have in common the past 10 seasons? They always seem to find themselves, if not winning a championship, at least losing that championship. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, what do they have in common, Charlton?
Yeah.
That they've won at least double-digit games, Charlton, the last decade. You think about how hard that feat is to accomplish. To not have a season where you won 9 games.
Yep.
But every one of those seasons you won at least 10 games in. And that's what has happened with the University of Alabama. The lowest win total they've had in the last decade has been 10 games. The lowest win total the New England Patriots has had in the last decade has been 10 games.
Yeah.
So when you talk about a model of consistency, the NFL is built for teams to rise to the top through the offseason, through free agency and through trades. One of the things about when you have a losing record the year before, and that's what the Eagles had, I think they had won 5 or 6 games the previous season prior to winning the Super Bowl, is that your strength of schedule is not that strong. They played a 4th-ranked schedule, a 4th-tier schedule in the NFL before winning the Super Bowl the previous season.
Yeah.
You think about the New England Patriots, Charlton, for the last decade, they played a number 1 ranked schedule for the last decade. So when you think about how dominant a team and an organization is, and a coach in Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
And the media stays peeved off at Bill Belichick because of his short answers.
Yeah.
He's like, my answers, I'm not in here coaching the media. Okay, I coach the game.
Yeah.
And if you can't figure out what I'm doing by watching, why should I have to explain it to you?
Yep. He's like that. He's a cantankerous person, but he keeps winning so no one can say. Now, someone who wants to be like him, John Gruden for the Oakland Raiders, keeps saying that Khalil Mack not being in camp, which is the best players on the Oakland Raiders football team. Offensively, defensively, he means more to that defense than anyone else on the defense. And then, of course, Carr's a guy on the offense that drives the ball for them. But even with that, they didn't win over 6 games last year, Big C. So John Gruden keeps saying Khalil Mack's not being in camp, that's not a distraction. Well, who's he talked about that with the Raiders? If you don't have your best player, how is that not a distraction, Big C?
Well, if he's not a distraction, why does he keep coming up?
Yeah.
That's what gets me. You say the guy's not a distraction. You weren't that good of a team with him there last year, Charlton. But you were that good a team with him there the year before.
Yeah.
When teams realize that your best player is the one that they need to stop, they find ways to do that.
Yeah.
They go away from him, Charlton. They double team him. They do the things to take him out of the equation. Now, if your quarterback is your best player, how can they take him out of the equation? He's in control of the ball every snap.
Yeah.
So he's the one that's making either the good decisions or the bad decisions. And what's ironic is, when he throws an incompletion, normally, the receiver made a bad decision. He didn't run the route properly. He didn't sell out for the ball.
Yeah.
But, when you throw it behind him, or you're overthrowing, you're making excuses. Well, he was pressured. He got to get more time by his offensive line.
Yeah.
You constantly make excuses for your quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And with all these overpaid quarterbacks we have in the NFL, I don't blame them for getting that money, but they're overpaid.
Yeah.
But they don't make excuses for the guys around them. They make excuses for the quarterbacks. And here it is, when David Carr said right off the bat that he and John Gruden were on the same page.
Yeah.
They were like they've known each other forever.
Yeah.
I mean, he automatically got an endorsement contract from Chapstick or somebody at that point. Because I ain't seen that much kissing up. Since girl was trying to leave somebody.
That's funny.
Yeah. But here it is. If he's not a distraction, and Derek Carr is that good, they should win every game.
Yeah.
Without Khalil Mack.
You would think so. If that's the case, you would think so. When we think about receivers being distractions and quarterbacks sometimes throwing receivers, under the bus, but there are also times when quarterbacks will throw quarterbacks under the bus. There was a statement today by John Elway, who played at Stanford, and it was an All-American quarterback at Stanford, an All-American in high school out of Southern California. I think Granada Hills High School in Southern California. And then we know his history in the NFL as a quarterback for the Denver Broncos. They were talking about Colin Kaepernick again today. Here's a guy they say they never don't want anything to do with, but he still comes up. For Elway to say, when I think about Cousins getting $84 million with the Vikings, and Elway said the reason they didn't sign Cap is he had an offer. That story's behind us. I'm not interested in approaching it. It's because he didn't take that $11 million contract that he had from the Niners and take $7 million to go to Denver, and the 49ers did not want to eat that $4 million because they wanted to get him out of the league. That was their punishment to him. But they've had quarterbacks that haven't succeeded since. So what's Elway's statement that Kaepernick's out of the question? How many quarterbacks that have been to Super Bowl does Denver have knocking on the door to come play for them? The last one they had, I think his name was Peyton Manning. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, and he came with a huge price tag. I think they paid him some $22 million, Charlton. So I think the $7 million that, they were saying to Colin Kaepernick, who had also been to a Super Bowl, was kind of an insult in a way, saying that you don't have that value. But, when we look at that issue of a Colin Kaepernick, Charlton, versus quarterbacks that are being paid too much money, well, when you look at monies that quarterbacks this past offseason received, your cousin in Minnesota who's never been to an NFC final, less known a Super Bowl, $85 million guaranteed. You gave Sam Bradford in Arizona $20 million guaranteed. $20 million. I don't think if you put his entire career together, Charlton, he's made it to one NFL season.
No.
So, he's got $20 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
And when you look at Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco, you gave him $135 million. $75 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
So the money is not equitable. But one thing that's equitable about the money, Charlton, is the color that's receiving it.
Yep.
Matt Ryan, $155 million in Atlanta. Praying that he can make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And Matthew Stafford in Detroit, I mean, he has a $27 million a year contract, Charlton.
Yeah.
So when you talk about guys who are worth money, it's not about productivity. It's about color in the NFL.
Yeah.
When you look at Khalil Mack holding out, Charlton, you saw Odell Beckham talking about he wanted a new contract, Charlton, and you've seen several other minority players saying that they wanted their contract looked at. Julio Jones, the best player on the Falcons team, and they gave Matt Ryan $155 million and said, well, Julio, you're only worth $8 million a year.
Horrible.
That's it.
Yeah.
Even though Matt Ryan can't win without you.
Yes.
But you're only worth $8 million a year. You're only worth being the 14th highest paid player in the league, and you're the best player on our team.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about player, but I'm talking about receiver.
Yeah.
He was only the 14th highest paid receiver in the league. And when you talk NFL receivers, there was three names pop out of your mouth right off the bat.
Yeah.
Brown, Beckham, Jones.
Yeah.
Right there, that was three. And so there was 11 guys being paid more than him.
You had to beg for their money. And so for people that don't understand, because mainstream media won't call it on the color line. We just told you that Vogue magazine, a lot of Caucasian women buy that because they see the image of themselves in it when you walk into any grocery store or a magazine section of a store. 126 years for them to have an African-American person even photograph the cover. So the NFL is the same thing as a color-conscious league like the paperback test, and people can Google it. The main product is African-American. If every African-American decided not to play NFL football, and I think it's losing its reign as one of the top sports in the country. I know people love it, but I think basketball is giving that gravitational pull because they respect more so than the NFL their players. They respect the golden goose. And everyone can Google this. Look at all the quarterbacks or even the Caucasian players in the league that don't have to beg for a $100 million contract. They're not begging for $100 million. They're saying, let us give it to you. And they're not even top players. But you look at the African Americans, like you just mentioned, some of the top receivers, even quarterbacks, running backs, they almost have to beg for a $2 million pay raise. And a guy that went to the Super Bowl can't even get a job. But we have guys that never even won a playoff game getting $80 million. And all I ask you to do is just put on a piece of paper what color do they look like. Because remember, Aretha Franklin told us to respect ourselves. I'm talking to mainstream too. Is the color of your quarterback more important than winning? And if that's the case, then at least say it. But if not the case, why so much pushback against the dominant players in the league, which is 75% or 70% happen to be African American? They're always begging for a small pay raise, and no one's begging them to take $100 million. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you're saying that you don't want to lose control of your league. You don't want it minority control. They control it as players. But the only way that you keep a toehold on having white supremacy in the league is making them the highest paid players in the league, Charlton.
Yeah.
And the media will always say, well, you're a franchise quarterback. We just spoke about in the NFC, Charlton, the last 10 Super Bowls. Only a black quarterback has been twice.
Yeah.
Think about that. Only a black quarterback has been twice in the NFC.
Yeah.
So when you talk about franchise quarterbacks, all of you experts out there, so-called experts out there, saying that these franchise quarterbacks, and how many teams in the NFL? 32?
32.
Okay, so that's 16 in the NFL. Okay. So only one black quarterback's been twice.
Yeah.
And in 10 years, Charlton, 9 white quarterbacks.
Yep.
So of these 9 white franchise quarterbacks, Charlton, and the last one who wasn't considered a franchise quarterback won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm trying to understand who understands what a franchise quarterback is.
Yeah.
You take a back journeyman, white guy, wins the Super Bowl. Okay?
Yep.
But these franchise white quarterbacks can't even make it to the Super Bowl. Can't even make it to consecutive Super Bowls.
But they're paying them $100 million.
But they're worth $100 million because they're going to get them there. So no one is doing the study of what it takes to win a Super Bowl or even get to a Super Bowl.
And also,
these guys that they draft number one.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm going to go back to John Elway here for a second.
Yeah.
At the time when he was talking about making the trade for Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
With the 49ers. He went out in the draft, traded up, and drafted this kid named Paxton Lynch out of Memphis.
Yeah.
Last year, Paxton Lynch was seen crying on the sideline. There was two quarterbacks crying on the sideline last year.
Yeah.
Paxton Lynch was one for Denver. Blake Bortles was the second for Jacksonville. Both of these guys were number one draft picks. Elway, and the media said, your buddy Mel Kiper, that Elway found his franchise quarterback
right.
in Paxton Lynch.
Yeah.
And the jury's been out on Blake Bortles, even though he made the AFC Finals last year. He's been out his entire career.
Yeah.
But he was crying at the end of the season.
Well, you know,
I wonder what the media outlook would be, Charlton, if you sit there and saw a black quarterback crying. How would they bash him down?
Oh, they try to run him down, and you bring up my mind to something. Cam Newton has also been with the NFC. Kaepernick has also been with the NFC, and Wilson went twice, and that's since the 49ers were in. And there are not that many given the opportunity. But of the few that are given the opportunity, you got 4 appearances in the 10 years on quarterbacks that have a hard time even getting a job or even getting drafted. But in the last 10 years, you have 3 that have been a combined 4 times in Wilson, Newton, and Kaepernick. So that to me says it's about opportunity. I can see if none of them had been there, but Newton's been once, Kaepernick has been once, and Wilson's been twice. And that's out of the few that even get the chance to start. Bixie, those are good odds, Bixie. Your thoughts?
Well, as you say, 4 out of the 10 appearances, Charlton, by African-American quarterbacks. But they're not looked at as iconic, prototypical, white franchise quarterback. You know, Cam Newton constantly comes under the beratement of the media.
Oh, yeah.
When you look, oh, he's inconsistent, you know, he has attitude problems, you know, he has to be a better passer. How many white quarterbacks have gone to the Super Bowl, you know, in the last 10 years? 6, Charlton. 6. Okay? We get that bashing about Kaepernick that he's not a quality NFL quarterback. He's a cancer.
Yeah.
No teammates ever said that about him, Charlton. It's been all the media. And as I made that statement earlier, if they don't understand what you're saying, then they have to lie about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if they don't respect, as Aretha said, they don't respect what you're doing, they'll also lie about what you're doing. So when they said that he was against the military, no, I mean, he was against the oppression of black people in America. That's American. They were saying he's anti-American because he's bringing it up, because he's pointing a finger at white society.
Yeah.
So it made him anti-American.
And
Russell Wilson has been to the Super Bowl twice. What white quarterback other than Tom Brady has done that, Charlton?
Well,
show him to me.
Yeah.
You know, show him to me.
You can't do it.
That's playing in the NFL.
Yeah.
So when you sit there and say, I got my franchise quarterback, all you geniuses in the media, without the teleprompter, without your notes in front of you, ask yourself, who's the franchise quarterbacks that have been drafted in the last 10 years in the NFL that have made it to the Super Bowl? 4 of them have been black.
Isn't that something? And so that's why we say, at least Google it. So anyone in the world, anyone that loves sports, you can listen to Big C Sports, you can listen to mainstream. I guarantee you, they don't fact check themselves because they're selling you a story that they want you to hear. I mean, some of them do a good job at being honest, but it's rare. And if I'm just saying, Google it. If I'm wrong, I'll come in and announce it tomorrow. I just want fairness and equality. It shouldn't take 126 years for Vogue magazine to let an African-American man photograph their models. All life began on the African continent. I gotta say this for Aretha Franklin. She talked about respect yourself. If we know where we all come from, we'll respect ourselves a little better. Google Dr. Leakey, who opined that dark skin is dominant, light skin is recessive. That's not racist, that's science. Google it. That dark skin is dominant, light skin is recessive. That the dominant skin can reproduce the recessive skin. The recessive skin cannot reproduce the dominant skin. That's science. If you're mad at that, be mad at God. Dr. Leakey was looking for the original people on the planet. He went to Europe, but he couldn't find it. He found and opined that all life began on the African continent. You can Google it. The cradle of civilization. So why is it now, it's when people say, hey, we got to show respect for ourselves, it's anathema, it's anti-American. It's not anti-American. To not love blackness is to not love where you came from. And that's just a scientific experiment. Since school has already started, it's okay to say that. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it is very profound to say that, and at all times. You know, athletics is like life, Charlton. Without opportunity, you cannot achieve. They've given many minorities an opportunity in athletics over the decades to allow them to achieve outside the mainstream, Charlton. Think about if the same amount of opportunities were given in the mainstream to minorities that you give to athletes in the athletic realm. You turn on a preseason game, Charlton, and you look at the defenses on these preseason teams, Charlton. They'll be predominantly black.
Yeah.
That's how it will start out. The skill positions on offense, other than quarterback, will be predominantly black. And half the O-line.
Yeah.
So when you say that people can't achieve, so if you can process what's going on in a matter of seconds in a football game, Charlton, why can't you process what's going on in society in a matter of seconds?
Yeah.
And so when you kept away from those opportunities, Charlton, you can never achieve. When we look at all these $100 million quarterbacks that are out there, and there's so many fans out there across the country that have these $100 million quarterbacks on your team.
Yep.
Look at how many of these $100 million quarterbacks have never won a playoff game.
A lot.
Think about that.
Yeah.
How many of these $100 million quarterbacks have never won a playoff game? But they're franchise quarterbacks, Shelton.
Google it.
They're the franchise savior.
Yeah.
They're the guy that's going to get you that championship.
Yep.
They've never won a playoff game, and yet they're making $100 million.
That's very fantastic.
And so you have to ask yourself, who in the hell is in charge of the chicken coop?
Yeah, somebody who doesn't know his numbers. In honor of the late Aretha Franklin, I just ask all people to, respect all humanity. But if you respect all humanity, that means you have to know where humanity began. And you can't say it enough because it's been shouted down over the years that you're anti-American if you ask people to Google positive affirmations about African Americans. As Aretha Franklin did in a lot of her songs. Against everybody's the same. We're the same tribe. I hope we can all remember that as we remember her, especially when we talk about respecting each other. So for everybody that really cared about her, do some research on where we all came from, and let's wipe out racism. Let's wipe out sexism. Let's speak the truth. Whether people listen to it or not, they can always Google it. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Bunditi Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, the sports universe, Charlton, has lost the queen. But I want to state one song that many people don't realize or even think about that much, but until they hear it. And the queen had a song said, I got to find me an angel. And she was going home to the angels, Charlton. But if you listen to the song, I got to find me an angel, because I don't want to be alone in my life. This is where the Queen of Soul is now, Charlton. She has become one of those angels, and she'll always be a part of everyone's life.
That's very well said. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Franklin family. May your voice live on throughout history. Every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911 so no man or woman will ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.